the greatest experience of my life.
Oh, well, now we need to hear about that. Just hold the clip there for a moment, Tommy. Then what's the Seoul Olympics like in 1988?
I covered every gold medal. I was on the track when Debbie Flintoff-King won.
Debbie, what does it feel like?
Oh, I feel fantastic.
The result comes up, she's won, and I'm literally, we're rubbing shoulders, she's jumping up and down.
Well, you would have been all over their shot.
I ruined the whole thing for them. They wanted to take away my accreditation. Everyone loved it, and they said, you kick him out, we're all out.
One out, all out.
I ran into this bloke. Hey, son, my name's Lorri Lawrence. What are you doing tomorrow? I said, I'm doing the tennis thing. He said, no, you're not. You're coming with me. I've got a bloke. He's going to win the gold medal.
How do you feel? Mate, we just beat 3 world record holders. How do you think I feel?
It was absolute chaotic scene. It was just craziness.
What's your enduring memory of that 1989 Ashes?
You said, come up to the players' room, onto the balcony.
At Lord's?
At Lord's, with camera. With Booney singing, the first people ever to record Beneath the Southern Cross I Stand.
Beneath the Southern Cross I Stand, Australia, you guilty!
My favourite moment was when Buddy kicked 100.
Oh, that's my favourite home and away game ever with you.
Yeah.
Go, Howie.
The crowd was everywhere, mate. How was it? 100 goals.
It's obviously good to get out of the way in the first quarter.
Lorri Lawrence, you'll forever be known by, and you will forever be known by this.
One last roll of the dice for the Eagles! Leo Barry, you star!
Not a week goes by when someone doesn't yell out, Quarters, you star, Leo Barry.
People yell out to you?
Every week.
I've never heard you talk about this. I'm just going to say a name to you. Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Okay.
It's time, Q.
All right, well.
Well, this man is a star, but I must say, before I introduce him, normally on this show there is one approach to a guest that if they're not keen, then I leave it. But this man, he took a bit of convincing, and rarely I do this, but I asked him a second time via text, and he came round. But he is a reluctant starter, but by gee, he's lived an unbelievable professional life, apart from what he's done in his personal life. And he steered me in the right direction as a young man, which I've always appreciated. His name is Stephen Quartermain. He still holds command over me. I'll explain in a moment. But Q, it is great to see you. How are you?
Good, mate. Great to catch up again.
You as well.
Have you come a long way?
Well, let's not get carried. Well, I thought I was going all right until you walked in. The first thing you said, you got your cap on backwards, you wanker. And I was like being back in the Channel 10 newsroom, and I got the script wrong again. Why a reluctant starter? Because I know talking to you, we got talking before Jared came on, and you were trying to help me find the vision of the famous cross outside the Telstra Dome when security dragged him away. And then I said, you should come on. You're a flat no at that point.
Yeah. Oh, look, this is going to surprise a lot of people. And you'll probably die laughing. I'm actually fundamentally a very shy person.
No, that doesn't surprise me.
And people often take my attitude as being aloof or disinterested. I'm actually fundamentally very shy and probably a person that is not as confident as they should be, and that might surprise a lot of people. But yeah, I'm basically a very shy private person, and I just thought, are people really interested? I mean, you've interviewed the most amazing guests. I thought, really, people interested in my story? Probably not. But you convinced me.
Well, I did, because in many ways, Quarters, this conversation will be a 35-year journey through the history of Australian sport, because like the job you've had, people would give their arm and the leg, and we'll get to some of the experiences
I know that.
of what you've done, mate.
I do appreciate that. That yes, I've been very lucky.
Well, like there's Ashes, there's Brownlows, there's grand finals, there's Melbourne Cups. Like it's the history of Australian sport over the last 35 years.
Yeah. I have lived the dream for a boy from the burbs that was an absolute sporting nut. And luckily I have lived the dream, and it sort of I fell into it, and through a lot of hard work. But I've been very privileged, and I do not take that for granted.
You talked about being shy. How do you go when it's the network upfronts, or which is where you have to introduce the new shows, or any of those thousands of events you've been to over the last 35 years where you have to mingle socially with people that may know you or know of you, but you don't know them? How, does that bring anxiety to you?
Not anxiety. I just feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I sort of feel, I've always felt, and this has probably been a detriment to my career, I've always felt, do I really belong here? Is this my shtick? But you have to adapt. I mean, you have to tough it out and do all those things. And I'm in the public eye, and fronted shows watched by thousands, millions, whatever, over the years. So you just have to. It's part of your job. So you learn to cope with a coping mechanism to get through your job. But truth be known, if I had a choice, I'd rather just be sitting at home pottering around the garden or cooking or something.
But you'd be watching the sport that you're talking about in many ways, because I know you're a massive sports fan.
So it's just something. I'm not the I guess I'm not the quintessential TV type. I don't get me wrong. I've enjoyed myself very much so, but I am fundamentally not uncomfortable or anxious, but I prefer not to be meeting and greeting. That's just me. And that's just, and as I said, it's not aloofness. It's just I'm shy.
When this comes out, this will probably come out after the grand final. When who knows, Quarters, the Hawks might have lifted the Premiership Cup. But you're a massive Hawthorne fan.
Yeah.
But as a result of your work with the I don't know if you call him the chairman, the emperor, the big boss, Craig Hutchison, put together Hawks Radio. So we're recording this on the Thursday before Hawthorne play the Western Bulldogs on Friday night in an elimination final. You've had one go at this already, and I listened to some of it and I loved it. Tell me your thoughts when he rang you, and what was it like to get back into the commentary box after probably ostensibly 5 years, mate? And it's not a thing you can just jump straight back into.
No, I actually rang. I got in touch with Hutchie.
Right.
Yeah, and said,
put your hand up.
I put my hand up.
I like it.
I said, which is very unlike me.
Yeah.
But I said, because again, back to your original question, I probably, one of my great faults in my life is I've failed to sell myself.
Right.
But I thought, this is something that's been big in the United States and the UK for decades.
It has.
And I just think there's a real market here. And I know many years ago, Foxtel experimented with Press Red for Ed. And then SEN have done a couple of blues radios. And I think there was one other, can't remember off the top. But I thought, this is a great idea. And I said to Hutchie, look, Hawthorne are on this roll. Have a think about it. And I'll put my hand up if you are interested. And sure enough, we got to do the Carlton game, which was very experimental and very different. And
did you have nervousness to go back into call for the first time in a long period?
Oh, well, I hadn't done it since the 2019 grand final, so I just thought, have I still got it? Can I do it? Will I fall into it? So I sat at home the day before and had a run through for 20 minutes, just a random call just to see if it worked. And my voice it took me about a week to recover my voice because I just haven't used those muscles for a long time. But it was actually hard to be biased. I can understand that, but knowing you, I can also struggle to understand it. People would say you've been doing that for years. But I found it hard to be biased because I was probably more concentrating on getting the basics right again and being professional. But as I warmed into it, so I next time I do it, I think I'll be a lot more relaxed. Yes, I can do it, and I'm going to have even more fun than I did the first time. So
why the Hawks?
Well, I was born in a non-AFL family. My mother was English, my father was Kiwi.
Right.
I was the only Quartermain born in Australia. My mum and dad met. My mum was a 2-pound pom. My dad was a Kiwi journalist. He came over for the Olympics in '56.
So your dad was a journo?
Yeah. Yeah, and
he was in Melbourne for the 56 games.
He came over with his mate just for a holiday to look at the 56 games. Loved Australia so much. Both he and his mate stayed. Met my mum. They got married. I was born in '62 out in the burbs in a place called Wanturna. Right. And we chuffed off overseas. My dad worked for the Australian Tourist Commission, so I was born here. Then we moved to New York.
As a kid,
I was 2.
How long were you there?
I was in New York for 2 and a bit years.
So no memories of it for you?
Just a little bit at the end.
Okay.
And then we moved to London for 4 and a bit years.
This I did not know.
Yeah. So I eventually came back to...
So did you start school in the UK?
Yes. Yes, started school in the UK and then we came back to Sydney. So we moved to Sydney. So I didn't...
At what age?
I would have been about 7 or 8.
So at this stage, footy has not crossed your path at all?
Nothing, no. In fact, I was about 8 or 9 when I came back to Australia.
Well, you couldn't have watched the AFL International show because you were sort of 30 years away from hosting that at that point.
Correct. So no knowledge of AFL football. So to cut a long story short, my dad was invited as a corporate guest of the MCC to watch a game in 1969. So I was 7. So I think we were still in Sydney. So we came down.
You remember this?
I do remember. Oh, yeah, my word, I remember this. So we were invited to the MCG. It happened to be Hawthorne versus Melbourne home game. Earlier in the year, Hawthorne had played. I know this because I've done my research. I spoke about it previously. Hawthorne beat Melbourne at Glenferrie Oval. Peter Hudson had a fair day, kicked 16 goals. So the return game was July, and Hawthorne played Melbourne.
This is the first game of footy you've ever been to?
First game of footy I've ever been to. First time I've ever seen this. Watched the game. Thought this is fantastic. Hawthorne won. Hudson, by the match report, had a quiet day, only kicked 9 goals, won. So I was taken down to the rooms for the winners.
Okay.
So I know I met a very young Lee Matthews, I met a Peter Crimmins, and I met Mr. Hudson.
Wow.
And I remember him shaking my hand and these monster hands. And I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. Anyway, so that's fine. Went back to Sydney, did what we did, came back, eventually moved back to Melbourne. I remember watching the 71 grand final in Sydney on television. I remember that team. That was Hawthorne. I said, I'm going to support them.
That's my team.
Anyway, we moved back to Melbourne. I think it was 72. Bang. That was it. And it came to Melbourne, of course, the football culture, even though Mum and Dad knew nothing about it. I said, Hawthorne's my team. From 1974, followed them religiously. Came back, played rugby union, which is my dad's sport. Got knocked out a few times. Dad said, nick off, not playing that anymore. Played one half of soccer for Ringwood City Wilhelmina. Got set off for bumping a person. I thought, this is
so
not
you're
my,
a bit more rugby than soccer.
yeah,
at that
this is
point.
not my go. So I took up Aussie rules, but we played on Sundays. So on Saturdays, so from 74 onwards, religiously, I very rarely missed a Hawthorne game.
So tell me, but before that, it's funny, the connection. So my father grew up in a place called New Norfolk down in
Yes.
Tasmania, which is where Peter Hudson was from.
Yes.
And I think he used to play tennis occasionally against him. And he moved over to Victoria, started playing for Hawthorne. So Dad started following the Hawks, and
There you
hence
go.
our family follows the
There you
Hawks.
go.
So it's amazing what connects you. So tell me, Quarters, in the mid-70s, what's your memories? What was your day at the footy?
So we'd go to the footy. I was
Who's
sat
we?
with, myself and sometimes my younger brother, who of course was Hawthorne, and my mum and dad became Hawthorne. And now my kids are Hawthorne.
Well done, Q.
Of
Well
course,
done.
that was not negotiable in my household. So
Agreed.
we sat with the Hawthorne cheer squad. So that was from 74 onwards. And
So
then,
this is Glenferrie?
no, it was the first year at Princess Park.
Princess
so
Park,
I
right.
never saw, with great regret, I never saw a game at Glenferrie.
So were you catching a tram or driving down there?
Caught a train from Ringwood, so got a walk from Ringwood North to Ringwood Station, which was a long walk for anyone that knows Ringwood.
Especially a long walk home after you cop a belting as well.
And didn't get cop too many belting in the
that's
mid
true,
70s.
Q.
But so then we got the train from I got the train from Ringwood to Flinders Street, walked to Elizabeth Street, got the tram from Elizabeth Street up to Princess Park, and then the trip home. Occasionally, very occasionally, my parents would come to a game, so we'd drive, which was very fancy.
Oh.
But that's how I got to the footy. So, and my early memories were particularly, I used to watch, Lee Matthews is the greatest player I've ever seen. We were full of stars. I remember you used to love Michael Moncrief, who
Okay.
took over from Peter Hudson, and used to love watching Gladys Moncrief. So I wore the 6 on my back. At school, and everyone used to call me Gladys at school because, it was Gladys Moncrief, Michael Moncrief. But then back in 77 when Peter Hudson came back, it was magical. Quarter fit, hadn't played for 5 years with the knee problems, and he was running businesses
Is this
down
when
in
he's
Tassie.
flying in with choppers and stuff?
No, that
Or-
was that's when they played Collingwood in a one-off. I think
Okay.
that was 74.
Right.
But he came back and played the full year 77. Clearly wasn't, had business interests and wasn't fully training and fit. But he was magical that year. He kicked, I think from memory, it was 110 goals. And we used to go from one end of the ground to the other. That old,
so you could follow
Yeah,
from full
so
forward
back
to full
before
forward.
ticketing was a thing. So
that's
so
good
we go
football.
from one end to the other and just watch, Lee Matthews, Peter Knights, Peter Hudson, Don Scott, all those guys weave their magic. And it was, for a silly, very young kid, it was awesome. And that year, even though Hudson, I remember there was one, this is so random that, I don't even know how I can remember it. There was a passage of play. They were playing the Bulldogs at Whitten Oval, and someone kicked it up, and Hudson had about 4 blokes hanging off him, and he still took the mark in the goal square. And I remember Lee Matthews just standing there going, how did he do that?
Just shaking his head.
And I thought, this guy's, and that's why I've been privileged enough to see Dunstall, Lockett, McKenna, Ablett, and I still think, even though they're all absolute champions, Peter Hudson is the best full forward I've ever seen.
So you would have had events or situations where you've either hosted or you've interviewed him, etc. So What's it like then once you've become a professional and you're standing beside talking to a bloke that you idolised?
Very surreal.
Is it?
Yeah, and I've felt that many times when I've met sporting stars from all fields. But yeah, it was interesting with Peter. We met at Hawthorne, and then they had the merger controversy, and then he was at St Kilda, and then he came back at Hawthorne, and there was as an administrator. So I had a few dramas with Peter at one stage, just with the hustle and bustle of daily journalism. But he was always professional and a gentleman, and we get on like a house on fire now. I've met him many times and been to many functions. He's one of the great gentlemen. It's still in good nick too.
Yes.
But even now, it's funny. Even now that I've met him 100 times and done many functions with him, I thought, geez, this is Peter Hudson.
Yeah.
I grew up idolising this guy.
I have that with Alan Border. Every time I sit beside him in cricket commentary, it's like, heavens above, that's Alan Border.
Yes.
And I want to talk to you about the 89
Yes.
Ashes because I know you headed over. So journalism.
Yep.
A plan at school, something you fell into?
That's a good question. People ask me that all the time, and I don't really remember what happened, but my dad was a journalist, and I did my VCE, and then I went through some.
Were you any good at school?
I was okay.
Okay.
I was really good. When I was overseas in Sydney, we went to a private school, and I was very academic. I came back to Melbourne and went into the public system, and probably lost my focus a bit.
Where'd you go?
I went to Norwood High School. Well, I went to about 12 or 13 schools, which was, I think, one of the reasons for my personality and my shyness, perhaps, because I was always the newbie and, I got bullied a bit.
I've lived that queue.
Yeah, which is, so you learn to cope, you learn to look after yourself. But anyway, I did my whole 6 years of high school at Norwood High in North Ringwood. Terrific school.
That's where my wife went.
Is that right?
My word.
Jeez. Great school. What was your question again? That's right. How did I get into journalism? So I did. So I was doing year 12, or when it was there, year 6. Was it year 6 or was
Form
it
6?
Form 6. That's
I don't know,
it.
Q.
No.
Way before my time.
No, it was Form 6. And I remember early in the year, the careers teacher saying, "What do you want to do?" And I thought, geez, I haven't thought about that much. Clearly not going to be a professional cricketer or a footballer. I thought, I want to be a journalist. And she said, slammed the table, said, "You're wasting your time. Too hard to get into, blah, 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 blah." Anyway.
Shout out to the careers teacher, queen of positivity.
So, she was so negative.
But you couldn't do that these days. Like, you'd end up in court if you said that to a child these days.
So
but anyway,
she said, "You're wasting your time. Do maths, do this, do." I said, anyway. So I went for, I reckon in Form 6, year 12, I would have sent 200 letters, at least, to every journalist.
Handwritten?
Handwritten, of course.
Impressive.
Back then, no such thing as
impressive.
So, and
it's not a cut and paste job back
then.
then.
So all radio stations, all television stations, all newspapers, and back then the media industry was ginormous. Lots of jobs available. Well, so I thought. Anyway, knockback after knockback after knockback after knockback. That's fine. So, year 12 finished. I was 17 because I did year 12 HSC when I was 16, so I was a bit younger than most. Went for some random sales job, got the job, and I went home. I thought, you know what? I have no interest in doing
Who
this.
with? Can you remember?
I think, geez, you're testing me. I think it was for a company called Main Nicholas.
Oh, yeah? Was that like logistics or something?
Something like that.
Okay.
I don't know what it was. Anyway, and I got home.
Their loss.
I thought, this is rubbish. They gave me the job. Anyway, I rang up the next day. I said, "Look, mate, thanks for the job." They gave it to me. I said, "But I'm not going to do it."
Without even, didn't do one day?
No, I thought, no. Anyway, so I went for all these jobs, and I got this interview at Leader Newspapers, which is the suburban newspaper chain throughout Melbourne. Went for an interview, got down to the final 2. The bloke rang me up and said, "You are down to the final 2, but unfortunately we've given the job to the other person." I said, "Oh, well, that's fine anyway." So anyway, 24 hours later, the phone rings. "Good news, another position's come up." So I started as a cadet journalist. It was Australia Day 1980. I was 17 years old, and my first paycheck, $68 a week.
68 a week.
68 a week.
So I'm looking at. I've looked.
So
at
that was January 1980 with the Leader newspaper.
So you were out on the road.
Yes,
writing
I did
stories.
everything. Did everything. At 17.
So you learnt on the job.
Politics, police. One of my first jobs I remember ever was at Croydon, and
This is for Leader.
Leader. It was a poor toddler got run over and killed.
Jeez.
And this was about my first week in the job.
And
I
you're
was
17.
I was 17. I was with a photographer, and we went there, and there's people there at the accident going, "You scum! What are you doing?" And I'm going, "Oh God, what have I got myself into?" What are you're sitting there watching this happen, and the photographer, fortunately, was a very seasoned old veteran. Said, "Don't worry about it, mate. That happens all the time. It's nothing to do with you." So that was great. And so that was I started, and I did sport, police rounds, court reporting, council reporting. So I did everything. It was a great grounding for me, even though I was really wet behind the ears.
I'm not big on notes. It says here 1982 you joined the ABC.
Yes. So when I was at Leader, I clearly wanted to work in the metropolitan media, even though I loved the job and they were really kind to me. 3 nights a week, because I had no, as I touched on at the start, I had no confidence. I was pretty shy. I needed to have a bit more confidence and sell myself. So I did radio school with a famous man called Clark Sinclair.
Radio school.
So
I've heard about this
Yes.
type of thing. What is it?
So he was a famous broadcaster that taught people how to broadcast. So his name was Clark Sinclair, legend of the business.
Did he have? Was he one of those blokes with an amazing voice and sort of?
Yeah, he passed away now, but he had his own community radio station in St Kilda. He trained a lot of very well-known people. So I did it just to help myself get confidence. I did that 3 nights a week for over a year. It wasn't cheap for a guy that was earning $68 a week.
Nothing's cheap on 68 a week.
So at the end of the day, I'd go from Ringwood Station, I'd get a train into Flinders Street, do the course. I'll get it by the time I got home, it was 9:30 at night, but it was good for me. It did help. Basically, we sat there and read ads and did a bit of broadcasting and had to stand in front of a group of people and talk and perform, and it was really good for me. And in 82, don't ask me how I got the job. I can't remember, but I got a job at ABC.
And so now, again, like your Leader newspaper. So it says, Quartermain worked as a radio and television journalist covering general news, politics, police rounds, finance, industrial affairs and sport.
Yes.
So that's an all-round operation. Tell me something from 82 that you would have learned about the finance situation that you could have been reporting on Q.
Well, I didn't take many lessons from it, I can tell you that. It was all, again, for a wet behind the ear boy, it was very, very challenging learning all these things. But the one thing about the ABC at the time, their training was brilliant.
Yep.
I had to learn to be a director. I had to learn to be a journalist. I had a full-time ABC voice trainer come and help me with my voice. I remember his name, Arch McCurdy, a legend. He was brilliant for me. So the training was great. You did rounds. So I did state politics. I did police rounds for quite some time, which was one of the best times of my life. I got to meet still one of my best friends, John Sylvester, Sly of the Underworld.
Okay.
All these police round legends that I got to work with, work alongside. So that was a great time. And then on the weekends, the thing at the ABC sort of started.
So were you reporting on radio at this point?
Yes, radio.
Okay.
But then I did radio, and then as I progressed in the 2 years, I also did some TV as well. So I'd do radio during the day, and then I'd go and do a TV story.
Right. Now, is there any, it's not on the tube of you, have you got anything? Have you got like a first tape type scenario or anything?
I have, and it's been destroyed.
Right, what would it have been? Because Eddie came in here and Eddie's got that famous one where he was trying to do the finance.
Well, let's put it this way, it's not much better than Eddie's.
Right.
But again, it was great training. So I remember the first few stories I did for ABC TV were colour stories. So I remember going out to Geelong and doing the opening of, it was some amusement park or something. But it was great training, great skills. So I did that. So it was long days, like police rounds particularly. I was in the city at 5 a.m. and then worked all day and then did TV at night, got home after a couple of drinks with my journalistic colleagues and did repeat, rinse, repeat, all that. So we worked very hard, but it was great for me. And the thing was at the ABC, when I particularly ran it, no one was interested in sport. So from 1982, it said, anyone want to cover the AFL Grand Final? Anyone want to cover the Test match? Anyone want to cover the Melbourne Cup? I'm going,
that's me.
So 82, I was 20. So there's me covering the 1982 Grand Final, sitting in the press box, watching Carlton play Richmond.
To do a radio report on it?
Radio report on it. So I sat in the press box in 82. Then I was at the Test match, the famous Test match, Tomo and Border.
Oh!
I was there.
Were you there on the final
I was
morning?
working, yes. And I went into the room after the game.
Take me into the rooms.
Oh, I went into the rooms after the game. I just walked in and Tomo was sitting there, completely upset to interview Tomo. And it was either Greg Chappell or Kim Hughes, I can't remember, told me to piss off.
But this is what I mean
Yes.
about the history of Australian sport you've travelled
so
through.
I was there covering it. And with that final famous last day when,
Both of them.
oh, it was great. So that, and I was covering Melbourne Cups and Australian Open tennis, meeting John McEnroe and
What was, as a kid, what was McEnroe like?
about the same.
So you're getting a fair bit of pushback.
Oh,
on,
yes.
on-
Yeah. So it's funny, and covering the races. I remember one story back in '82. It was a Blue Diamond meeting, and there was a famous horse called Rancher. Mm-hmm. And, the owner was Charlie Weymouth, I think his name was. And I remember being in and the big question was, were they going to sell this horse for millions? Because it was a little champion. So I'd won the Blue Diamond, and I said, Mr. Weymouth, are you going to sell Rancher now? And he ripped me a new one.
So another one's had a crack at you.
He ripped me a new one. I thought, what have I done wrong? And it really was quite deflating because it was the first time I'd been at the horse races. And, there's Jack Elliott and Bill Collins and Rollo Lawrence. Anyway, so all these famous racing names. And I thought, oh, gosh, this is, very upsetting. So I was walking away from the media conference and this hand came on my back and it said, don't worry, son. He said, that was a fair question and you handled yourself well. I turned around, it was Rollo Lawrence. And a lot of people wouldn't know who Rollo Lawrence was, but he was a famous racing rider and worked on Channel 7. I thought, you bloody legend. And I never forgot it. He had no need to do it, but you could see I was struggling a bit. And I thought, you know what? That's the lesson I learnt that day whenever I saw someone in the same situation, because it meant so much to me then.
Yeah.
Just a random,
It
incident.
does.
But you learn the lesson. I said, if I ever see anyone in that situation, I'll reach out because sometimes people need a bit of help.
Well, it's funny you say that because I only got a few notes here, but one of them I've just made a mark here saying email well done. So we'll get back to where you were, but this is something I did want to say to your Quarters, and you won't remember this. So I came across from 7, and it was my first time reporting, and all of a sudden I had to do the V8s at 10, and I was in the newsroom. Dermott O'Brien was in charge, and you were, it was you and Mal Walden. You were the king of the whole operation. You were in the sport department, but I was in general news. And I had to do I'd taken over from Grant Danier, the cat stuck up a tree story.
Yes.
I'd done one on Nathan Buckley, a cure for his hamstring, and then I think I'd been sent for a UFO in Nunawading. And those stories always used to go at 5:38, and then that story go to air, and then you'd pop up, and Mal would say, oh, what's happening with the sport? And then you'd preview it. And I'd done a couple of these stories in a row, and I was very unsure in the newsroom because I wasn't a journalist.
No.
I didn't have a journalistic background. I didn't know how to put a news story together.
It's not for the meek and mild.
No, it's not. And it was a very competitive place. And there I was with these seasoned political, sport, current affairs journalists, and I'm doing bloody UFOs in Nunawading and just sort of the funny guy on the news. And you sent me an email. You won't remember this. And I don't have the email, but you basically said, Mark, keep doing what you're doing. It's something on a point of difference on the news. If you continue down this path, you'll have all sorts of opportunities to open up for you. Oh. And I read it, and I was thinking at the time, shit, I'm not cut out for the newsroom. And I read that, and I was like, okay, well, people need to understand where you were in the pecking order. You were the man. So to get that email, it's funny, you're talking about the racing guy. To get that email from you, I was like, okay, well, maybe this is a path to continue down. So I've probably never thanked you for that, but I thank you, Quarters.
There you go. I think it's important to reach out to people because you never get feedback. You only get feedback when you've stuffed up.
When you're about to get sacked.
Yes. Or you sometimes don't even know.
Strange thing about that, the media.
Yeah,
and every
it's funny
athlete
about that.
says that.
Yeah.
If you say, oh, you're going well here, oh, thanks, I'd love some feedback. I don't get any feedback.
No, and none of us really get feedback these days. So it's good to give feedback, I think, and particularly for people coming into the industry because they're unsure of themselves. And as I said, particularly news, I mean, it's not for the meek and mild.
No,
you get sent straight to the slaughterhouse if you can't cope.
Yeah, my word.
So it's good to encourage and nurture and the young ones because it's the future. We were there once.
We were. Now, I'm going to go to a clip here. There's various clips. Tommy's out the back. We need the clip with Eddie, and I've just written in brackets here, a piece to camera near the end chat. So you were rolling with some... So you've got to Channel 10.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, December 84, I was at the races for the ABC during the Spring Carnival.
Right.
And I ran into Eddie, who I'd met a couple of times at the Tribunal, because I was doing Tribunal for the ABC.
Yep.
And I ran into a young bloke called Bruce McAvaney. And they both met me at the races in 84 and said, November 84, we'd love you to come and work for 10. So that was November.
Eddie and Macca did.
Eddie and Macca did. They said, come and go for an interview. So they teed up an interview with David Johnson a couple of weeks later, and I was working at 10 in December 84.
And have it been ever since?
I've been there for 40 years this December.
Shit, you're getting a hold, aren't you?
Oh, don't start me.
When is the famous Commonwealth Games? What Commonwealth Games is that?
Which one?
You on the pool deck.
Oh, that would have been 92 in Canada.
Okay, well, we're on track then. So there's various urban legends about you that I'm going to ask you about that you may or may not choose to answer. But then there are certain moments in a broadcaster's career that, of all the work you've done, there's certain things that you're remembered for, and you just hope they're half-decent things. So, Q, we go to the Commonwealth Games, and this is, for mine, the best carnival interview ever done that I've seen. I'm talking carnival, I'm talking Commonwealth Games.
Oh, you're talking, Lauren, this is the Olympic Games.
Or Olympics. So this is the Olympics.
Yeah, this is 88 Olympics.
Right, so this is prior to the sports show.
Yes, that's prior to the sports show.
So to me, this is the first time I see the great Quartermain and I think, who's this bloke? So Duncan Armstrong's one goal.
Seoul.
You're in Seoul.
Yes.
Before we get to the clip then, what's the Seoul Olympics like in 1988?
The greatest experience of my life.
Oh, well, now we need to hear about that. Just hold the clip there for a moment, Tommy. I feel we're going to get a story or two of you just rampaging in South Korea.
That's pretty much it. Look, it was again, I hadn't been overseas for 10 before.
So this is your first overseas operation?
This is my first proper overseas trip since living overseas. So I get invited to the Seoul Olympics. It was magnificent. I get there and I was basically told you can do what you like.
Oh.
So I covered every gold medal. I was on the track when Debbie Flintoff-King won and almost got kicked out of the Olympics. That's another story.
Oh, tell me the story.
Oh, well, so anyway.
You can't do a little tease like that and say after the break,
So this was after Lorri Lawrence, after Duncan Armstrong won, but once the athletics started, Murray Plant, the great Murray Plant, he's sadly no longer with us. Bruce was calling the athletics. Debbie Flintoff-King was one of the favourites.
Against the Russian?
The 400 hurdles. Anyway, so I could do what I liked, and so I said, I'm going to go and cover Debbie Flintoff for the day. So anyway, I sat in the dugout just off the finish line with Murray Plant. Debbie Flintoff runs. Absolute developed print. Couldn't separate first and second. Anyway, so we're waiting for this, who's won? Murray Plant says, "Get out there, son." So he pushes me onto the track with a microphone and a camera.
No announcement as to who's won at this point?
No, so I'm sitting there. You can see Debbie. I'm sitting there with Debbie Flintoff. We're waiting for the result. And she said, "What do you reckon?" I said, "I reckon you came second."
You called it wrong.
Oh, shocking. She says, "No, I reckon I've won." Anyway, so I'm sitting there. The result comes up. She's won, and I'm literally, we're rubbing shoulders. She's jumping up and down, and so I'm, the microphone going blah blah blah, interviewing her. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't have the correct accreditation.
I think you've broken a fair few protocols now in the Olympics.
Anyway, the next day, NBC cracked it big time. The American broadcaster.
Well, you would have been all over their shots as well.
Oh, well, I ruined the whole thing for them. So in comes Kevin Gosper, and I'm not sure if it was the boss of the Olympics, which was Juan Antonio. I don't think it was him, but it was someone very heavy from the Olympics. And they wanted to kick me out of the Olympics, take away my accreditation. Anyway, I can't remember the guy's name who was the EP of Channel 10, and to his credit, everyone loved it. And they said, "You kick him out, we're all out."
One out, all out?
Yeah, so in the end...
That's the type of boss you want.
Yeah, I loved it. So in the end, nothing happened. It was just a storm in a teacup. But I was severely reprimanded for ruining the thing. So that was a few days after.
Well, let's have a listen to Lorri, and then you can tell me how this developed, and we'll listen to it, then maybe describe it, because people won't have seen this.
Can you talk now, mate? How do you feel? Mate, we just beat 3 world record holders. How do you think I feel? How do you think Mate, inside, I reckon you knew he was going to do that. Did you think he... Mate, thanks. Lorri, inside, did you think he could do it? Mate, what do you think we come here for? Silver? Stuff the silver, we come for the gold. What do you think we come for? Sorry, mate.
So what people aren't realising, he's giving you 2 slaps across the chops in the middle of your first answer. So I said, Q, there's moments that people will forever remember you for, and that is the one that springs to mind. So tell me how this come to pass and what you thought when Lorri started slapping you. We didn't come here for silver.
Look, it was it still is probably the greatest moment of my my working career. So again, I had the roving job. So the day before, I'd gone to watch the gymnastics practice. And I was already working my schedule. I told the Olympics chief of staff in South Korea, I'm going to do a story on the Australian women's doubles. You know, they're a chance to win a medal. So anyway, so I'm at the I think it was gymnastics the night before, watching practice or anything. And I ran into this bloke. He said, "G'day, son." I said, "Hello." He says, "My name's Lorri Lawrence." I said, "Hello, I'm Stephen Quartermain from Channel 10. He said, "Good to see you, son." He said, "What are you doing tomorrow?" I said, I'm doing a tennis thing. He said, "No, you're not." He said, "You're coming with me. You stay with me, son. I've got a bloke. He's going to win the gold medal."
How good.
I said, okay. So anyway, so I go to the chief of staff. The tennis. Oh, no, we want you to do tennis. Look, just trust me. You know, I've met this bloke and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I said, how is the best to cover this? Because, you know, obviously you can't get to sit there. I said, I just decided I'm going to sit with Lorri with the camera. And I really, to this day, can't remember the cameraman's name. And I humbly apologise because he was the star, not me. He did a great job.
And they are the greatest cameramen at Channel 10.
So he did a brilliant job. Anyway, so we sat with Lorri and had a camera on him from go to woe. And it was like this volcanic eruption. And so that's what happened at the end.
What are you thinking when he's... are you experienced enough at that stage? Was that pre-recorded or live?
Live. Oh, no, it was
pre-recorded. Going on a tape.
Yes,
so are you experienced enough at that stage... You know, when you've done it for long enough that in the moment you know this is brilliant television. Like when a bloke's slapping you across the chops and saying stuff the silver, like you probably don't understand it's going to be iconic, but are you experienced enough to know this is what we would call gold?
Yes.
But you don't know what the cameraman's got though, do you?
No, you don't know what the cameraman's got. And it was absolute chaotic scenes. And I was I was still relatively young.
Yes.
So it was just craziness. But I knew it was pretty good. And then we followed Lorri and all the other stuff that was going on that went on for minutes. So I went back and said, I've got something pretty good here. And they're all going, "Oh, you're guilty."
Well, when they see the tape in the old machine,
so it was great. And the funny thing is, I got I had to go and do a few interviews by phone back to Australia. But the story was, and it got back very quickly, that I'd had my jaw broken in a fight at the Olympics. So things were very different. There's no such thing as the internet or mobile phones, so. My mum basically got a phone call hours later or the next day saying that Stephen had been, from a friend of a friend of a friend, Stephen had been badly injured. He had his jaw broken in a fight at the Olympics.
On the back of the Lorri Lawrence?
Yes.
Like when
even a few weeks ago, there was a story, they relived that moment during the Olympics, and the American journalist wrote a story and said that the follow-up from that was Quartermain suffered a broken jaw. I did it. Like I've had a couple of slaps around the chops. So nothing happened. It was just a couple of slaps. But that's how the Bush Telegraph worked back then. So it was a great moment. Even a few years later, the famous Bud Greenspan did a documentary on the Olympics, and they flew out a whole crew to interview me just about that.
Did they?
Yeah, which takes pride of place in their documentary about the '88 Olympics.
Well, and this is again why I'm saying to people that you've, and this is why I wanted to speak to you, because you've been so associated with some enormous moments. The first urban legend about Quartermain, and I'm not going straight to the first one you're thinking of because I know that's the one you're worried about and you've never spoken about it and you might not speak about it now. There's a tease. We'll get for that one. Did you live with Dermott?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. The story was...
In his heyday?
Yes. So
Perm Ferrari style Dermott?
My word.
Tell us something about that.
The story was I had... Dermott and I were mates, obviously. I was a journo, Hawthorne supporter. We used to go out every Saturday night.
Where was the Saturday night?
Well, usually the Metro. Usually the Metro.
No queuing with Derm, surely.
Oh, no, Q doesn't queue.
Q doesn't queue. That's 250 episodes. That might be the number one line. Q doesn't queue. You reckon I'm a wanker with my hat on backwards?
So anyway, yes, Dermott and I knew each other very well, like Platts and Jason Dunstall and all those guys. So we went out a lot. Anyway, so in 1986 or 7, Dermott was dating Australia's Miss Universe contestant.
Surprise,
As you do.
surprise.
As you do. So anyway, I just bought a house, my first house in Ashburton. In fact, it would have been 87. Dermott said, mate, I'm looking for someone who I can trust for Donna to live. Her name was Donna, lovely woman, still speak to her from time to time. Would you mind if she has a bedroom in your house? I said, I really want to live alone, but okay, help out a mate. Anyway, so as it turns out...
Hang on, help out a mate, Miss Universe.
So, yeah. Well,
pretty easy sell. Help out a mate. Give me a spell.
It wasn't the hardest decision to make, I'll be honest.
Hey, listen to this bullshit, Tommy. Help out a mate when Miss Universe moves into the spare room. Sorry, Q.
So anyway, so I'm with my girlfriend stays most nights, and then Donna moves in. But of course, it wasn't just Donna moving in. And Dermott moved in, basically. So Dermott lived there 5 nights a week until probably 1990. Yeah, so it was at least 2 or 3 years. And through that heyday, through
premierships.
The premierships.
Was the Ferrari parked in the front driveway?
One night his Ferrari was parked on my nature strip, and the next morning someone had gone in and stripped a few things out of the Ferrari. I said, Dermott, you can't park it. This is Ashburton, so you can't park a Ferrari here. So yeah, one night some bugger got in and took a few things out of the Ferrari. So yeah, his Ferrari was parked on my nature strip, and so there was many interesting times which I could write 3 books, but no. I'm not going.
No, and I wouldn't ask you to. Footy.
Yes.
What's the first time you called any form of football, and was it a thing you fell into?
Magic, 1995. It's probably still the most enjoyable year of my life.
Magic
Radio.
So it was AM?
Yes.
Okay.
So it was set up to take on the likes of 3AW.
Right. What were they on the dial?
I think they were 693.
Okay, so the now the 3AW dial.
I'm pretty sure it was. Anyway, so it was set up by Ricky Nixon and his stable of stars.
Right. The Club 10.
Well, there's a few stars. So there was Eddie was involved. No, Eddie wasn't involved. So sorry, it was Ricky Nixon was involved, and then there was Kevin Bartlett, who was the big star. Just an absolute delight to work with. Sam Kekovich was our star special comments man. And we had people like Ricky Nixon, Craig Kelly, Matt Rendell, Barry Round.
Ned was in it.
Yes, Barry Round. Just doing round the grounds. Paul Callery was the stats man. Tony Shaw was involved.
Wow.
Just retired.
Who are you calling with?
Mainly KB.
KB.
Yeah.
So I'm taking you back now. So what year are we talking?
95.
So did you roll into any VFL, AFL calling? You did
straight away.
First day straight into it.
Bang, straight into it. So
wow.
It was so exciting. I'd been doing the basketball before then, so I had some calling experience and some swimming.
And that was when basketball was at its greatest.
Basketball was huge.
So you called swimming as well?
Just for the Commonwealth Games for 10, so I had a bit of calling experience. So obviously I knew my football well.
Do you want to be a caller or did you fall in?
Sort of just became part of the job.
Yeah, I know that story.
Yeah. It was a great year. We had a wonderful year. And then AW saw the threat, bought us and dismantled us.
Bloody Sydney again, no doubt.
I think it was more Melbourne.
Right, it was Melbourne.
So I remember getting called into AW and saying, look, they kept Magic, but they just made it an absolute skeleton of a football calling station. So it was good business tactics. And they came and offered me a job and they offered me an embarrassing amount of money. I said, no, don't. So it's 96 I sat out. Didn't do anything. And then Triple M came to pass.
So you were there from day one?
Yes. So
tell me a memory of that. That's bizarre.
Yeah, so Eddie and I were the callers. And
was there a direction to do it differently?
Yes. At least Simon was involved as the EP. And it was to make it was Young Turks. It really was. And we had great technology. Dr. Peter Larkins was on the ground with technology. We could cross live everywhere. We were just ripping the new station, ripping the other stations apart with the excitement and the accessibility and the technology, and they had to catch up pretty quickly. Very exciting time. So that was 97 and Triple M away. That was the birth of Triple M.
And at that stage, was it Triple M rocks footy right from the start or not?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, and we had, what was the bat? Is it Tism?
Yeah.
The footy, Shut Up Footy's on the radio.
On the radio.
So it was exciting times, and I think in a lot of ways, Triple M revolutionised the way footy was covered. You had Rex Hunt, of course, who was legendary. BT was one of the original callers with us. So away we went, and it was wild. It was wild, and it's to this day, Triple M still is edgy compared to the rest.
Yeah, and still going really, really well.
Yeah.
Obviously, of all the football you called it, Triple MQ, there's one very famous moment that gets brought up, I reckon, on our Friday night show.
I know where you're going with this one. Yeah.
I work with Jason Dunstall now, which is a bit like Peter Hudson for you or Alan Border for me, because growing up as a Hawthorne fan. So the fried rice incident, Q, it's one of these, again, things you're tied to.
Yes.
And like Lorri Lawrence, on the TV side of things, on the radio side of things, that would be the most replayed bit of audio. So Triple M footy's been going for, what, we're talking sort of how many years now? We're talking
97, 20 something years,
27, 28 years. This it would be the most played.
Yes, I have heard it on occasions.
Numerous times. Basically, Q,
like
on a
every
Friday
week.
night when we're running out of steam, we've got nothing to talk about, and we want to stir up cheap, we just say, what about the time with you and Quarters? So what are your memories? And I know you're great mates again now, but I presume it caused a bit of friction at the time.
Well, it was just another game. You know what it's like. I was working 7 days a week, 7.5 months a year. So I was doing TV. So you do your news Monday to Friday. You do your television on the Saturday, and wherever you were in Australia, you'd fly back.
It's a big week, isn't it?
It's a big week. Anyway, so it was just another game. But Trent Crode from Hawthorne, who had sustained a very serious injury, and I was told...
a foot or something?
Yeah, so I was told he'd never play again.
Okay.
So it was just a regular Sunday. I don't know how I raised it with Jason. I said, Jason, Trent Crode will never play again. Oh, you bullshitter, you're just typical media. I said, Jason... And then it escalated from there. And I was tired and cranky. I think the Triple M boss was there with some clients at the time.
The word is that Benny Amarfio, the boss, was in the back of the box.
He was in the back of the box. And I think I was calling with Hamish.
I reckon it was.
Yeah, and Hamish McLaughlin and Chief. But, by that time of the season, we're all getting a bit tired and jaded. And my information was absolutely faultless. I knew where I was going. Jason was on the board at the time. He just lied. And it escalated from there.
So what are your memories of when the big fella just dumped the fried rice down the back?
We were just having an argument, and that's okay. That's robust discussion is
good
what
radio.
happens. And then he just threw his box of food on me. I thought, you pig. And it was a bit. Look, for the time, it was humiliating. I would throw,
No,
mate. I'm happy to have a very robust, aggressive discussion. Don't worry, I've been in the news business for 45 years, but he just took things a bit too far. So things were a bit edgy.
Felt like
for the rest of. We had to get through the rest. I walked out for a while just to cool off. And we got back and did our job, and that was the end of the day. And, of course, then the phone's going ballistic. And
so if it happened now, because there's a camera in every commentary box, it would be like you have to be.
I don't think it would happen now.
Well, you have to be so careful now with everything you do on radio, which is in some ways taking the fun out of it.
It has. I agree with that.
The PC world we live in.
Don't like cameras on radio.
No, and you forget they're there. Even your facial expressions can tell 1,000 words. So how did you patch it up? Did the big fella is he an apologiser?
He came in the next week and there was some sort of half-assed apology.
Half-assed sounds about right.
Which meant absolutely nothing. But we're fine. It's one of those things. Absolutely no grudges held. I've actually recently texted Jason when he got in the Hall of Fame. I texted him again when he turned 60.
Yep.
He texted back. We've run into each other heaps of times. I don't have an issue. I don't think Jason does.
No, of course he doesn't.
No, it's just one of those things. Look back now, laugh. No big deal. It was at the time it was a bit upsetting on the day when you had food thrown on you when you're trying to do your job, and I stand up for myself. But anyway, it's come and gone, and you look back now and you have a laugh. But I have no issue with Jason at all. Done a great job for the Hawks, champion of the game.
Yes,
great in the media, and have a beer with him any day.
I love to hear that. The newsroom Q. I don't know the answer to this, so it may be a very short discussion. Were you in the newsroom? I presume you were for September 11.
Well, it happened obviously overnight, so I was in the newsroom the day after.
What are your memories of that? I ask you that because I spoke to Grant Denyer about this, and he told me about some of the stuff that he was seeing that wasn't going to air and the impact it had on him.
Yes.
Would that be the biggest news event that you've been around?
Yes.
Yeah,
yeah.
For tragic reasons, obviously.
I covered Ash Wednesday for the ABC in '83. That was pretty horrendous. What I saw as a very young
So on
kid.
site, you would.
I was down the peninsula, yeah.
Yep.
So that was very scary. But yeah, I think every day in the newsroom we see footage that never gets to air.
Rightfully so.
Oh, of course. And September 11 was clearly one of those days. It was just a surreal experience. Newsrooms are very different animals.
Resilient places.
They have to be, and it's a brutal way to make a living. Are you dealing with? Don't get me wrong. There's some beautiful stories we do, and I work predominantly in sport now. But you're dealing with death and destruction and tragedy every day. So it does affect your psyche, and that's why newsrooms are robust. And there's a lot of politically incorrect jokes and that type of thing, because you have to get through the day and humour each other.
And a few beers typically when things have.
Yeah. So that was a really heavy day for so many reasons. And I remember at the end of the news that day, we did something we rarely do, and we all went out for a drink.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So that doesn't happen much, but we did it that day because it was just, I think it took its toll on everyone and having to deal with all the stuff you see, and not that it had any effect with us. No family were involved, but I could only imagine what it was like actually living in New York at the time. But it was, just as a journalist, it was a horrendous thing to see, and it changed the way we lived, didn't it?
Yeah, my word, it did. I'm skipping around all over the place here.
That's all right.
89 Ashes.
Yes.
So for those not aware, Australia were the worst team to
Ever.
leave the shores, beat England 4-0. Dino, AB, the birth of Steve Waugh,
Merv
Alan
Hughes.
Border as captain, Merv Hughes, probably, Terry Alderman.
Ian Healy.
Yeah, and now as a cricket fan, which I know you are, what's your... Again, this is the life you've lived professionally through some of these events. What's your enduring memory of that 1989 Ashes?
So I put a proposal to Channel 10 saying, look, this is a tour we could get some good stuff out
Geez,
of.
you're in the TV camera at the right time.
I was.
Put a proposal.
I was.
You imagine now if you
No.
rolled in and said, listen, I think we should go to the Ashes for 3 months.
Yeah, nah.
Good luck with that, Q.
So I put a proposal, and they said, to my surprise, they said yes. So it took a lot of setting up because I basically did it all by myself with my my cameraman producer Ian Gates.
Oh, Gatesy.
Gatesy. So we went over, and unfortunately we didn't go on the same flight because that was the famous Booney
the Booney
flight.
one, right.
So that would have been interesting. So we went over and we covered the first test and we won, and we covered the second test at Lords, and I almost lost my accreditation. In fact, I did lose my accreditation.
What did you do that time?
Well,
There's a common theme here.
It's fair to say that I struck up quite a good relationship with the players.
Socially?
That is, we went out every night. So after the second test, after the first test, I remember Gatesy made this little motivational video and gave it to AB and all that. And I thought, it was a pretty hard nut to crack, AB. So we gave him this video to play in the bus, and Gatesy did a wonderful job. It was just winning the first test to music. They loved it, and of course we were
sweet.
We were sweet. Not that we had the rights, because Channel 9 had the rights. Anyway, cut a long story short, it was the second test, I think it was, at Lords. We won. And this is true. Bob Simpson, who again was a hard nut to crack, he said, come up to the players' room onto the balcony.
At Lords?
At Lords.
With camera?
With camera.
Without the rights?
With Booney singing, the first people ever to record Beneath the Southern Cross I Stand.
The famous Australian Test match winning
That's the way
song.
it goes, isn't it? Yes.
Yes.
So we recorded it and ran it. Of course, the proverbials hit the fan because Ian Chappell was downstairs trying to get up to it, and Bobby Simpson wouldn't let Ian Chappell
And he's
up.
the rights holder at Channel 9.
And Ian Chappell as well,
Ian
one
Chappell.
of my boyhood heroes.
Yes.
So we had this amazing vision around the story, blah, blah, blah. I get back to the hotel room that night. Someone from Channel 9, who I don't remember the name, rang me up and started abusing me. How you no rights, blah, 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 blah. I just told him to go forth and multiply. Anyway, as it turns out, I get a call from the ECCB or a message, and they'd taken my accreditation away. So I lost my accreditation because Nine said, no, we haven't done more of this. So I went to the next test, he won that, and I was still looked after because the boys would, look after me, but it made it a bit more difficult. So, yeah, that was the experience I had over there, but it was fantastic, and I struck up great relationships, learned a lot about how cricketers enjoy themselves.
Used to, Q.
Used to.
Unfortunately,
And,
used to.
and developed a great relationship with all the players, particularly Alan Border. And I know Alan was, labelled Captain Grumpy, but I always got on famously with AB after that, and it was very handy for my career. So it was terrific for me. And it was every time I run into them, I always have a bit of a laugh about it. It was a great tour.
I had to. I'm lucky, Q, that I don't ever have to use the auto cue because I reckon I'm the worst auto cue reader in Australia. I had to do it at the football awards the other night. I was like, just let's limit the amount of time I have to use the auto cue here. You've done it for 30 odd years. What's the key to being as natural as you are presenting what you do?
I always got taught, going back to my ABC voice coach, he said, when you're speaking to people on television or radio, speak to them like you're having a chat at the pub. Mm-hmm. That's what he said to me.
Which I get in live circumstances, but sitting in the studio reading the auto cue, that is a real skill to do, I reckon.
I guess experience has a lot to do with it.
Okay.
And I always say that when I train people or people appearing on camera for the first time with auto cue, I say, look, it's very natural and we all do it and we all still do it. I said, when you're on television, everything goes, so you're excited and you're talking at 1,000,000 miles an hour and everything's racing around in your head. So the one bit of advice I can give you if you're on television, be as slow as you can. You can never be too slow because you're so excited that the adrenaline's running. So just try and be as slow as you can. And that's the best advice I can give, and that relaxes them a bit. So, but it's like everything, it's experience. I was terrible reading auto cue when I started, but been doing it for a long time, so I should be better at it. But yeah, I always say be slow because the adrenaline's flowing. But not everyone can do it. It's quite funny watching people sometimes not doing auto cue.
I remember Grant Hackett, he came on here and talked about it. And he talked about how he found it a struggle and he didn't really get any advice as we're talking about it. It can make a mess of you in a very short period of time, I think, the auto cue.
It can, and there again is what we were talking about earlier. No media organisation has time these days to train or give you feedback. You just find out the hard way or learn the hard way. So it is survival of the fittest, particularly in the modern times.
You've then had to step into the role, and I haven't got the timeline here, and I don't know how sensitive this is. I don't think it would be because you are Channel 10. You had a period where was it after Mal retired?
Yes, so it was a handover from Mal to me. I read the news for about, I think it was about 6 years, 7 years.
And did an amazing job of it. But you were able to go from the sports guy to the news guy. Now, the sports guy can be pretty relaxed. He can be pretty knockabout. He's talking about hamstrings and grand finals. The news guy is delivering stories like September 11 or Ash Wednesday or a murder on the street of King Street. So how do you swap to have the gravitas required to be a really respected and, when they do all the surveys, you want the newsreader to be believable, relatable, but just a beacon.
Yes.
How did you approach that?
Well,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I started in news, and then I gradually took over from Mal. I was doing 1 or 2 days a week, so it was a sort of a slow introduction. But I had done news quite a bit. I used to do some weekend news. I did the morning news, so it wasn't a new thing to me. But it's true, you do have to change. I mean, you do have to change a bit. If it's sport, you can have a joke and whatever you do on social media. It was very different. You had to sort of change your attitude a little bit and be more straight down the line, I think. Yeah, it's a different beast when you're reading the news compared to reading the sport. So, yeah, it does require a change of attitude and a change of style.
But your career, it's just been... Like any career, there's ups and downs, but it's linear. It just continues to go up. But you did the news for 6 years. So tell me, as much as you want to, because I obviously I know you love the place and you work there. Jennifer Kite,
yes,
who you guys do an amazing job.
Yep.
She replaced you.
Yes.
And you're sent... I don't want to say back to the sports desk, but you're moved to the... How did it strike you at the time? Because it was a bit of a standoff. I don't quite remember.
No, it wasn't a standoff.
Were you annoyed or not?
Oh, yeah. It came completely out of the blue. To this day, I have no reason why they did it. I have my suspicions, but...
So what do you get? Do you get a call into the office?
No, I just got called downstairs and they said...
downstairs.
We're replacing you.
Right.
Why? I thought to myself. I didn't ask why because I thought they've already made that decision, so there's no point worrying about it. So I thought, oh, well... So just dusted myself off. Did that day, and then
did it take much dusting?
No, not really. That's my job. So I didn't really, well, obviously it was playing around my mind, but I said, just go and do my job. That's the way it is. That's the way the business works. So then took a few weeks off, decided what I wanted to do. Had a bit of a look around. Wasn't really anything that was taking my fancy that was offered to me that was palatable. So I love the news business. I'm a newsman first. So went back and did the sport after I went over and watched my son play cricket in England for 2 or 3 weeks.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, came back and just got back into it. There's no point throwing the toys out of the cot or being bitter and twisted about it, because where's it going to get you? I still had a family to feed. I still love what I do. And you never know what twists and turns this business can produce. So just went back and did my job and been there since.
What does it mean to you to be that figure at Channel 10 that I think people's immediate association when they say Channel 10, they think Stephen Quartermain?
Do they?
There's no doubt they do.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm just a guy that does his job every day. These days I try and provide a bit of leadership and a bit of entertainment for the troops and a bit of nurturing and just have a bit of a laugh. And if people ask for advice, I give it to them. Sometimes I'll give them advice, rarely, about the way they should go about things. But I just like being part of the best thing. Channel 10's had so many ups and downs. We've been in receivership so many times, so many owners.
I remember Q at one point. I think I was off the back of maybe potentially losing the Big Bash, and they didn't have any money. And I said to you, times are not good. He said, mate, times are okay. They're not as bad as when you have to share a makeup wipe.
Yes.
After you've gone off air, someone's already used it. I was like, right, if I see that, I know things are really rooted here.
That's right. Well, once we were in receivership and things were so tight, we have to take our makeup off with a Chuck super wipe, and then they'd wash the Chucks and they'd reuse it. That's how bad things got. So I've seen it all. But the reason Channel 10 has survived is because of people at the coalface.
Yes.
The quality of people at the coalface has been the reason why Channel 10, through thick and thin, has survived. And it's just like a big family, and that's why it would be so hard to leave.
It really is. People
it's
will
just
listen
a
to
great
that and say,
place.
yeah.
No,
but
it's true. The people that
there's something about wandering into the camera room there at Channel 10 and Dubsy is there, or Woody was there, or Fitzy, or Johnny Kay, and it's just like, these are good times and good people. Quality
people, and that's why Channel 10 has survived, because the people at the coalface are just brilliant, and they're like family, and that's why 10 has survived and hopefully does for years to come.
Yeah, I should mention the hamster as well, Rowan Leonard.
Yes, he and I started the same day, actually.
Did you? Yeah. Well, shout out to all those Channel 10 camera crews. Footy at 10, I think a lot of people still look back at that coverage. Yourself, Robert Walls, Malcolm Blight, Michael Christian was calling alongside you. Hutto, Tim Lane, Silvani was involved. Andy Marr was on the boundary.
Peter Dacos
was there. So what? Yeah, I think you're privileged to be in a position, Q. I've seen this over the years now, where you are at ground level, especially in a sports broadcast, when something is started, which it was with you and Channel 10 Footy. What are your memories of that time? Because that coverage stacks up so beautifully.
It does. I honestly, I know I'm a bit biased, but it really does stack up wonderfully well. Just great days when we got I remember the day we got the rights, and I was just sitting in the backyard, just ecstatic. And we just basically built a team from ground zero. Dave Barham, of course, was running the show. And it was just the most exciting time that I'd been at 10. It was great. It was a great team again. There was no egos at 10. Everyone did their role and everyone got on famously well, as you know. And it was just 10 years of pure joy.
Yeah.
Yeah, loved it.
It's funny what you say about the no egos, because I stepped into it late and played a very small role on the boundary. And I remember thinking, geez, Robert Walls, Malcolm Blight, how am I even going to talk to these people? Because they're enormous figures.
They were, and as coaches, intimidating.
Yeah, very intimidating. Yeah. And then when Vossi joined, I remember when Vossi joined, it was like he'd come off the Brisbane Lions, he had that big barrel chest, but there's something Dave did, and he did it on the cricket as well, Dave Barham, credit to him. He formulated a team environment where a kid like me could walk in, or someone like you calling, and just be made to feel. Christy was obviously involved as well.
Christy Malthouse,
to be made comfortable and part of the team, no matter how small a role you were. And when blokes like Robert Walls or Malcolm Blythe would take the time to have a chat with you and ask how you're going, you were like 10 foot tall.
Yeah, and Robert Walls still remains a very good friend, and occasionally I chat to Blighty, but I think that was the skill of Dave Barham putting the team together. I think he probably selected the right people, but just his leadership. And it was just great. Everyone was equal, and got on famously. It was just, as I said, it was just a wonderful time. No one ever had a falling out with anyone.
No.
It was just pure joy to work with everyone, and it was 10 years of bliss.
My favourite moment, I don't have the clip of it, I should have got it, was when Buddy kicked 100.
Oh, that's my favourite home and away game ever with you.
Yeah,
it was great.
And you threw down at me, and I can
Mick Jagger.
Oh no, I stuffed that bit up.
No, you didn't.
But I just remember Jolie Starcevich, our producer, because Bud had been, we were meant to speak to Bud on the ground.
Yes.
And then he'd gone, because Fev ended up on 99 that day as well. And then he'd gone down to the rooms, and then Clinton Bound, the Hawthorne media manager, poked his head out, and I said, are we allowed to chat with him? Because no one had chatted to anyone in a game at that point. And Clinton said, no, he doesn't want to do it. And Joel said, are you good to go? And I was just like, yeah, no, he's good to go. And then you threw down at me. I was packing myself. And then, that was that's a standout night at the footy that night.
Home and away games come and go.
Yes.
You know, it's like we've done hundreds of them. But that is one of the probably the three that stand out in my mind because of the Buddy 100, the people storming the ground, the interview with you that you did with
Joe
him.
Roughhead getting sent back to stop bloody...
and Clarkson double, triple teaming for Vola to stop him getting...
on,
he's still bitter about that,
I'm not
Brendan.
surprised.
So that was one of the great home and away games, and it was still to this day, love seeing replay of that.
We'll get to the grand final in a moment, the famous moment. But hosting a Brownlow, again, I look at people that have done that, yourself have done. I look at the way Hamish do it, and I think the amount of class and skill and gravitas required is, I look at it and think, oh, geez, I'd have no hope of doing that. How much work goes into those high-end Brownlow presentations where everything is black tie and sharp?
Yeah, the first one was very intimidating. Because obviously as a kid growing up watching the Brownlow every year, so all of a sudden, and the first one we did was at Telstra Dome.
Oh, down on the ground.
Thousands there. The stage, honestly, Rolling Stones could have played there and still had room to move.
Right.
It was the biggest stage, and there's little old me. And I remember the rehearsal, and I was very, very nervous, and there was thousands there. It was freezing cold. Dave said, right, this is what you're going to do. You're going to stand in the middle of the crowd, and I'm going to introduce you. You're going to walk up, and then you're going to introduce the Brownlow night. I said, no worries. Anyway, so ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Stephen Quartermain. So I start walking. And Dave's gone to me, hurry up, get to the stage. I said, geez, mate, you set this up.
you taking your moment in the sun a bit far.
So it was good to then it switched me on, and we got the Brownlow done, and it was...
So what year was that? Who won that year?
That was Simon Black.
Okay, so we'll be able to figure out what year it was off the back of who won the Brownlow.
Simon Black.
Juddy won a couple with you.
Yeah, and Adam Goods won one, and Adam Cooney. But all the research that I did for the interviews was all by myself. I didn't really have the capability. You tend to have researchers working for it.
No.
It's different for Seven. They're probably a bit luckier. They have a bit more staff. But everything I did was by myself. And some clubs were really unhelpful. I remember ringing Geelong saying, look, Gary Ablett was the favourite. Do you mind if I have a quick 10-minute chat to Gary? No.
Pretty definitive.
Nope. And then I said, someone will help you. So I think it was Neil Barham at the time came on and said, tell me about Gary Ablett. I don't know much. So this is not helping, Barmy.
Thanks for the background.
So it was a bit of a, but so all the research you did was yourself. That for the Brownlow, I didn't want auto cue, so there was no auto cue.
You didn't?
No, much better without auto cue.
Love it. A lot to get through on the rundown though.
Yeah, so it's a brain busting night. But my key to anything is preparation. I prepped my backside off for the Brownlow. Spent hours and hours and hours. So I got there on the night. I wasn't nervous, apart from the first night when you get the feed.
Because you'd done the prep.
But for the other four that I did, I'd done all the prep. So I walked up and I was fine. I was good because I know I'd done the prep. And that's the key to anything in life is doing the prep. So I was all ready to go. The only thing you stress about is Joe Black wins from from Fremantle Dockers you've never heard of. And you go,
Tell us a bit about yourself.
Tell us a bit about yourself, son.
Tell us a bit about yourself.
So you're just praying that you've someone that, because I used to research about a dozen players, and it was quite a painstaking thing to do. So you just hope that the winner is in one of those 12s, because if they're not, it can be. That's when you're relying on your producers and etc. to get in your ear and feed you some info, because that's the only thing I was stressed about. So fortunately, I covered my bases with all the guys that won, and even the Adam Cooney one where the burger ring. Well, that was just something I randomly found in hours of painstaking research. It must have been in an article or something, and I thought that could be funny.
That's where the research pays off, because immediately now when you say the first thing you said, Adam Cooney, I say burger ring.
That's right.
So it's a credit to the hard work that you've done to get to that point.
But the Brownlow was great. I loved it. Yeah, it was great fun, and it was quite surreal. As I said, being a young lad watching Peter Landy and Bruce and Sandy Roberts, whoever used to do it, go, wow, I'm here hosting the Brownlow. It was a great moment in my career.
I'm going to show you the famous vision now, but I just want you to put in the back of your mind, I'm going to ask you a moment that you've completely stuffed up on TV. So just put that on the back of your mind and think about. No, I'm not saying you have. I just want one from you, because we've all had stuff ups along the way. I just want to hear a story where the great man's got something. Right, Tommy, I think now it is it's time for the famous Leo Barry. 32 and a half minutes into the grand final. The Swans lead 58-54. Channel 10 has the count up clock, so there's no
the 5-minute warning.
5-minute warning.
Back.
So you're a fan?
I can't stand the Americanization of
you love it. Same as Andy Marr. Clock. He wants the.
I like the surprise, and I think it helped the commentary and the viewing very, very much.
So what you're saying, before we roll this clip, it's 32 minutes into the last quarter. You have no idea when the siren is going to sound. None.
Absolutely.
And you like the suspense of that.
I think Tim and Rob, who were in the box with me, both had gone to the producer, the EP, and said how long to go. I think they might have known. I never wanted to know, because I think it took away your commentary, the surprise element. So I had absolutely no. Obviously, I knew it was almost over, but no idea.
So Lorri Lawrence, you'll forever be known by, and you will forever be known by this. You want to be known for successful things, and we'll talk about this call in a moment.
Heads along the boundary line. Oh, good mark by Cox. Cox throws it onto the left. One last roll of the dice for the Eagles! Leo Barry, you star! Bob Murray reincarnate. The longest premiership drought in football history is over for the first time in 72 years.
See, you ought to be congratulated, because that's 20-odd years of experience coming out and absolutely nailing the biggest moment. Because the biggest moments in sport, they're made even better with fantastic commentary. And Leo Barry, you star, you're a modest man, but that's an iconic, to me, it is honestly, I think, Jesselenko, you beauty. I think 13 from Hutto with Buddy Franklin. And I think Leo Barry, you star. The three moments that stick out to me, I'm sure there's a lot more in footy commentary over the years. Yeah. Before we talk about what you think of that moment, take me back to the closing stages of a grand final.
Well,
it's a bloody amazing call, mate.
Yeah, thank you. We were very lucky when 10 took over, because 7 had a series of blowouts when they had the rights late.
Yes.
And we were lucky we had a whole lot of close games. And the Sydney West Coast rivalry, the most incredible, brutal games of football over 2 or 3 year period, always decided by a kick. So it was just one of those brutal, in a lot of ways it was unattractive, but because it was a grand final and because it was so tight, it was a great contest. And we were sitting in the box. It was quite a stressful moment, because you want to, you think to yourself, if it's close, you want to, get it right.
My word.
So that's always very stressful in any game, but particularly in a grand final, it's always going to be there. So
it's going to be replayed for
not that it was going through your mind at the time, but you're thinking, if it's close, you want to be switched on and get it right, because imagine if you stuffed it up.
And whether you're calling the moment or not.
That's right.
I presume you're calling the grand final with Hutto that day.
It was Tim Lane.
Okay, Tim Lane. Yeah. So you're just swapping back and forth.
So it was just my turn to call. I was also judging the Norm Smith voting that day, and they changed it that you did the votes at the end of the game rather than late in
5 or 10 to go.
Yeah, which was a good idea. But I had Patrick Keane. I was sitting here, one of the closest games in history. Patrick Keane's going, have you got your votes yet?
This is the AFL's communication manager. Come on, Paddy.
I said, mate, Anyway, so that was causing me stress. And anyway, so the ball comes back, and to this day, it's not a term I ever used before, and it's not a term I've ever used since. I don't know even how it came out of my mouth. There was no planning, or obviously you can't plan for that. It just happened, like naturally. I don't know why I said "you star." It just happened.
But it was the perfect summation.
Yeah,
of what was going
looking
on.
back, I guess, yeah.
And do you walk out? Like you probably ventured via the September Club, knowing you queue for a quiet ale that night. But do you get a moment to get? You're not a self-indulgent man, I get that. But do you have a moment where you think, okay, I'm, as knowing you're probably as far as you're going to go, as I'm happy with the way it came out?
Yeah, to be honest, that I did the game, signed off. I just thought, it was a great game. We got it right at the end. I had no thought about how good or otherwise it was. I just went home. I think I went out for Chinese with the family and didn't even think about it.
Spun the lazy Susan around.
Yeah, didn't think about it and didn't watch the replay or anything, and just woke up the next day and had a couple of calls saying, great moment. So I went back and had a look. I thought, it was. I was really pleased that I did the moment proud. That's all I was happy for, that I didn't stuff up and that it was a moment with I think I did it justice,
My
so
word, you did.
so I was just happy that it worked out, really. Yeah. And of course since it's been, there's not a week goes by when someone doesn't yell out, quarters you star Leo.
People yell out to you?
Every week.
Do they?
Every week. Wherever I am, at a pub or driving or at a shopping centre or at the footy. Yeah, so it's like something I get every week. So it's a nice problem to have.
Well, it's nice that it's not something you stuffed up and people are yelling out to you.
I would have been. I don't know if I could. If I'd stuffed up that and made a meal of it, I don't know if I could have kept going.
Well, I think about that.
As in calling again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think about that in the men's 100-metre final, and Jared sat in
That's
here
right,
before he
the
went
pressure.
to the Olympics. Like one stumble, and they've gone from 3 metres out of the blocks to 99 metres. Like that's what you're forever remembered by.
That's right, and particularly in those short events.
Yeah.
That's why Jared's work was
outstanding.
incredible. And
Outstanding.
look at Bruce, absolute legend at it.
So have you? Give me a story about a stuff up, a Quartermain stuff up.
You know what? There's nothing that's been absolutely horrendous.
You still got to read the Sport Tonight queue.
I know,
You
but
never know what's round
I've
the
stuffed
corner.
up many times. Get tongue tied or whatever, and made mistakes, facts of error of facts. Sorry.
Yeah.
I've made hundreds of mistakes, but there has never been a Sandy Roberts moment.
Right. Okay.
Although I did one. In fact, one of the.
Here we go.
One day I did, it was the same word. I was reading the news one night and I called it the cock plate. It's not that funny.
Funny cue.
And I thought, cock's. So I said cock's plate. And I thought, but that happens a lot when you're reading the news every night. But then I got a letter, like 2 days later, from Steve Vizard,
Right.
who, was a star.
Yes.
And I was just a bloody journo. And he said, "Oh, great moment! You handled yourself well." I looked at the letter. I think it's one of the things I kept. Just saying, it was funny. I thought, oh, there you go. But nothing absolutely horrendous. Moments go wrong, and there's interviews that they don't want to know about you, and all that sort of stuff. But nothing diabolical. But I'm sure people couldn't refresh my mind.
But see, that's the difference, because you do that on the news tonight. Within 4 minutes.
Oh, it's
half the country's got the ability to see
half
it.
the world.
Yes.
Yes.
You're half the world, you're right.
So it's different.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a different level of stuff up now.
Oh, absolutely. I think the worst I was when I just started television. I did a couple of stories for ABC, and my on-air work was, and even in the early days at 10, my on-air work was very, very amateurish and substandard. So I'm glad there's nothing around.
You should be calling football. Would you like to be calling football? Like, for all the radio stations and TV out there now, and obviously next year there's going to be even more calling of the game going on.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
So
I lost my work during COVID.
Yep.
So I did 10, obviously, and then 7 and Fox took over. No chance of working for 7, and Fox did their own thing, which was fine, because I think they're more like people not associated with other television networks, which is fine. So I did a bit of work for, after Triple M finished, I did a little bit of work for Hutchie, which was good. I've called with Peter Donegan, my very, very good friend. So I love that.
geez, he can call.
One of the all-time greats.
Throw him at any sport.
Absolutely. One of my good mates and one of the all-time greats. And then we did 2019 grand final. COVID hit, lost my work. fully understood why, because they just wanted to scale right back and they called from the studio. I had no interest in calling from a studio and just faded away. So, yeah, but
The fire still burns?
well, it didn't, but it does now.
Yeah.
So it's something I would like to. I would like to work in television, calling, but I don't think there's going to be an opportunity there. So maybe radio next year. But yeah, everyone says, why are you doing? Particularly my son Jack. He says, Dad, what are you doing sitting at home? You should be calling. So maybe next year.
Triple
Yeah.
M. I think you need to come back to Triple M.
Well, we'll see what happens. But yes, the answer to that is yes. I would like to call football again next year. Now, in what shape or form that is, I don't know at this stage.
Well, if you own a TV station or a radio station, you got it right there. So, Q. We've got through the notes I made. Thank you for the email. Lorri Lawrence. Talk about the fried rice. The administrators coming in. Leo Barrow. Brownlows. Working with Eddie. Rat's toss bag. Is one name left on this sheet.
Okay.
And this is, I've never heard you talk about this, whether you do or not. I told you at the start, if you're not comfortable with something, tell me, we cut it out. I'm just going to say a name to you.
Yes.
I'm going to be fascinated by your reaction,
Okay.
and then I'm going to be fascinated by what you do or don't say.
Okay.
Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Okay.
It's time, Q.
All right. Well,
Have you ever told this story?
I think I've told it once. So it was in the mid-90s, I think.
I'm fascinated by this. I'm fascinated by this.
And Crown had, Planet Hollywood's opening and all that. So there's lots of big whiz-bang places opening. Anyway, Jean-Claude Van Damme was on tour here. I'm not sure what he was doing here, but
Movie star, martial artist
Yes.
extraordinaire. Tough man.
yes. Anyway, so he'd been in Sydney a few days before and he'd landed himself in a bit of bother, I think, with a female photographer, a journo, and he'd maybe something he'd brushed aside her where he shouldn't have brushed aside her or something like that. So there was a bit of drama.
It was inappropriate.
Inappropriate. Anyway, I thought, no big deal. Anyway, so we got invited to this function with Jean-Claude Van Damme. So I was with my wife at the time and everything was fine and we were, the usual about-towners. We were all having a drink and Jean-Claude was there and he came in and he had his big henchman with him and all that. No big deal. I think Jean had a big day.
Right.
And he started working the room in a way he shouldn't have worked the room.
Okay.
Anyway, so that was fine. And at one stage, my wife was at the bar
Yes.
and Jean-Claude has saddled up to Mrs. Q
Right.
and touched her where he shouldn't.
Okay.
So being the boy from the burbs, I went up to him and said, what are you doing? He's come at me, so I didn't punch him. I pushed him over.
You push Jean-Claude Van
Yeah.
Damme over.
Yeah, he stumbled backwards.
He stumbles.
He stumbles. And
This is like a karate expert of great
I said,
renown.
what are you doing, dickhead? Or words to that effect. Anyway, so there was a scene, as you can imagine. His henchman come in. I thought, I'm in trouble here.
Well, not only have you taken on a martial artist, he's
But
two
mind you,
goons.
my conscience is completely clear. What he did was wrong
Well, you're doing the
and
right thing.
inappropriate. So I'm merely defending my wife at the time. Fortunately, the Crown people, the security, sort of had an inkling as what was going on and what he'd been up to. So there was a coming together of the henchmen. And
Was there a scuffle between
scuffle.
opposing
No,
henchmen?
No. It
Okay.
was all fine.
Right.
No more drama than that. I'd pushed him away.
Jean-Claude
And
Van Damme.
anyway, so Jean-Claude jumps up and goes, what you doing? All this. And I said, mate, get stuffed, or words to that effect. I'm cleaning it up here, Howie. And then he says, and then there was, everyone came together and he said, I buy you a drink. And I said, mate, you can stick your drink up your ass. They were free anyway.
Was it reported at the time? Because it's that great
imagine
urban
now
myth that
with
surrounds
social
you.
media.
Oh, it'd be huge.
It'd be huge. Anyway, so
It's quite heroic,
but it
I
was
feel.
reported.
Right.
I know Eddie Maguire he had a column in the Herald Sun.
Right.
And so he wrote the story, and to say there was some mayo on it would be an understatement.
Right.
But it did make news, and it made overseas news. I did get some correspondence from overseas, including one day I was at work at Channel 10. This is a true story.
Yes.
This bloke rings up and says, is that Steve Quartermain? I said, yeah. He said, my name's, whatever his name was, Jack Knackers. He says, I work in a bar in Hollywood. in Los Angeles? I said, yes. He said, I read about you and Jean-Claude. He said, he's the worst person I've ever had in a bar. I said, can you send me a photo? I'm putting a photo of you above my head at the bar in Hollywood. I said, come on, mate. He said, no, send me a photo. I want you to sign it. I'm going to put it as a tribute to you at the back of the bar. I said, you are my hero.
So you sent the old publicity shot over and signed it?
I signed a publicity shot and said, God, no, I probably never made the light of day, but so that was that was the story. But anyway, there's more to it, but I'll pull up there because it gets there's Jean-Claude he's having a big day. Let's leave it at that.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you telling the story.
That's a bit of it. That's all I can tell.
No, that's good. Q, we always finish this the same way. I just look at it all. There's so much more vision I want to show you, but I don't want to take up too much.
That's all right. I don't have to be at work till 1:30. So
we always finish this the same way. That and thank you for coming in because
Pleasure.
It's been bloody fantastic to hear your stories and go through the history of the last 30 years of Australian sport. And there's a lot we haven't touched on. For those that listen to this show, we are privileged. A lot of young people listen to this show that are trying to make their way in the world. You've had tremendous success in the world of broadcasting. What advice would you give to those youngsters, not related to broadcasting, but about achieving the things they want to achieve in their life, mate?
Hard work is number one. You've got to work hard. Don't be entitled. You have to. Don't be ever too embarrassed to do anything. When you start work, I spent the first few months of my cadetship cleaning out the gutters. So I get up there and clean the leaves out of the gutters. Buy my boss cigarettes, Chinese food for lunch. Just be prepared to start from scratch, and you got to work. You can't fudge it. You've just got to work hard. And if you work hard, it's the old cliche. Opportunities do come up, but you've got to be prepared to do the work, and you've also got to prepare. Whatever you do in life, you've got to be prepared. That's 3/4 of the battle. If you go into something, whether you're playing a sport or whether you're working or whatever you're doing, try and prepare as best you can for that moment. Because when you prepare, when you go into that scenario, you're sort of under control in a way. So try and be as prepared as best you can for any challenges, particularly work. Just do the work, work hard, and be part of a team.
Yeah. Which is the Channel 10 way, isn't it? Yeah. Where do you sit on, I don't mean sport, just in general. You've had enormous changes in the media landscape that you've worked in. Like I look at the news now and, 2 or 3 stories every night are based around CCTV vision, which wouldn't have happened 15 years
Thank
ago.
God.
Yeah, well, exactly. Or the clickbait world that's developed in your time in news. How do you see the way we're handling as media distributors modern news and sport?
It's very, very different. No media organisation now has the resources at their disposal to do it the old way.
I used to fly doing the colour stories in the Channel 10 chopper.
Yeah.
Around the state to go and see literally a sheep that thought it was a dog queue.
Yep.
In the helicopter at Channel 10.
When we worked at Nuttawad, and we had one chopper, it was like a taxi, and at one stage we had 2. 2. Eddie and I used to fly down to Portsea on the weekends for a counter lunch.
See, I love Channel 10 as pie paper, but I ain't going anywhere. And if Channel 10's got a chopper now, I ain't going in it because I don't know the last time when it was service queue.
No, I didn't know. Look, everything was very safe back then. But look, we don't have the resources. No media organisation. I mean, all the channels share vision these days, and yes. I'm not saying it's an element of laziness because technology is different. I mean, there is CCTV vision. Something happens on the other side of the world, we've got it 2 minutes later.
Yes.
So everyone's a cameraman. Everyone. So your phone, the phone that you've got, that's news. So if something happens, the immediacy is incredible. I remember doing watching the Don Lane show when I was a kid, and Don Lane would interview Sammy Davis Jr. live from Los Angeles and go, how big's this?
Yeah, and how much it would have cost. It would have been link fans and...
No, I can speak to whoever I want on the phone, in deepest, darkest Russia if I like.
It's amazing, isn't it?
So technology has changed news gathering a lot. So, that's just a fact of life and will continue to do so.
Now, Q, I like to give guests a gift when they come on the show. and this is the gift I've been giving, but I don't. Now I'm a bit concerned because
It's not a cap I have to turn backwards,
No,
is it?
it's not a cap you have to turn backwards. But I don't know if it's going to cross paths and cause you trouble with your previous sponsors at Carlton Draft. Because I don't know how Erica and I become part owners of a brewery queue.
Oh, very good.
So I've brought you, but I'm going to present you some Bow and Heads brewing.
Oh, no,
beer.
very nice.
We got the draft, the Japanese, the mid, and the pale. But I just don't know if this is going to cut across any deal you did with CUP back in the day illegally queued.
No, I'm not a proud man, Howie. I'll drink anything.
Okay. Well, let me know how you go.
No, it looks good.
With the Bow and Heads
Oh,
brewing
look at
coat.
you. You're a conglomerate
Well,
now.
I don't know how it's happened, Q, but mate, enjoy the beer. But thank you for coming on the show. I know you were a bit reluctant. I hope you enjoyed it.
I
hope
did, of course I did.
Good.
Yeah, thanks.
And it's just a great history of Australian sport. And as I said, someone that sent me a really kind email at a time when I was completely out of my depth, and I've never forgotten it. So I appreciate it. I appreciate your trust coming in here, mate. You're a good man, and I, for one, and I think many people would love to hear you calling the footy again. So you've done it all. So if that doesn't happen, so be it. You've dominated. It'd be great to hear you on the radio or the TV again, mate, because you're a star.
Thank you for having me.